I'm Jim Csek with Kelowna Now and Three Times a Charm. I'm back again. Hopefully we have Ian with us this time so we don't have to start for the fourth time. Ian?
Howdy ho.
What are the chances? Look at that. Third time lucky, right? Wow. There you go. Start off with the traffic report. Flowing well, east and west. That's one thing that's working this morning. The traffic is flowing. There you go. We start off this morning with some scary stuff out of Russia and Ukraine, right? Because Russia says Ukraine has struck into its territory with the U.S. supplied missiles and vows to react accordingly. Lavrov says that the Western NATO powers should read the nuclear agreement. And I don't know, it seems like maybe that the Democrats are trying to burn down the House before they turn over power, or what's going on?
Well, I've certainly I've heard that theory on Twitter, but I don't know if they're quite that suicidal. But it is it's quite frightening on the face of it. But then the other thing that I would say is important to bear in mind is that the Russians have made these threats many times in the past, and nothing has happened. But
Yeah.
you never know when it might be a real threat, I suppose, and it is definitely frightening.
It seems odd that they gave him the go-ahead, like 60 days out from the end of
It is quite unusual because, I mean, I thought it was unusual when they lost the election. Some of Biden's lieutenants came out and said, we've got a lot to do and we need to get it done. That's quite unusual because usually when you lose an election, you don't do any sort of big stuff, any big things in the 2 or 3 months before you're out of the White House. So that it is a bit weird. But I suppose foreign policy is a different basket altogether, and maybe they would say that it had reached an emergency level in Ukraine and they needed to do this.
Well, you and I have been talking for a while that if the Democrats and the Liberals, for that matter, lose power, that they may, do some things that would seem very unusual as they lose their grip on power.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's controversial ground that we're on here. It's quite testy stuff, isn't it? But I mean, we definitely saw some of that with the Donald Trump presidency, I would say. The loss of power, and then all of a sudden you had these really strange things happening, like people in the FBI and CIA and whatnot coming out, and this sort of endless sabotage from within of the Trump presidency.
Yeah.
So it could well be in that category, yeah.
And then the G20 statement on Russia, according to Trudeau, not strong enough for him.
Yeah, it doesn't sometimes doesn't do himself any favors, does he, with language like that?
You want to switch that graphic there, Rommel? Yeah, so it's like he just wanted to interject in there, like he has like Canada has a real say in what's going on, or what?
But it's yeah, I mean, Canada is a respected country, I would say, despite its government, but I'm not entirely sure that Mr. Trudeau is very respected at the moment, at least. Certainly doesn't have a very sort of high reputation within the G20, which includes the likes of Russia and India and lots of other countries that have really not got on well with Trudeau. So it is a funny thing for him to say.
Yeah, and then the third thing there from your five things this morning is Liberal cabinet minister under fire over his heritage claims. Another Liberal cabinet minister that seems to have, stretched the truth, I guess would be a polite way to say it.
Well, he denies. We should start off by saying he denies all of this. I mean, he hasn't really said much about the Cree ancestry thing because that is a really, really peculiar situation, and I advise people to read into it because it is very, very odd. Where the Liberal Party itself kind of bragged at one point about how he was one of their indigenous MPs, but now I don't really understand what he's trying to say. Something to do with like his adoptive parents or something. It's very confusing. But then the other thing is that he shared a business address and a mailbox with a woman that was arrested in a cocaine drug bust. And he said that he's never met this woman, but I don't know. There are other reports that he actually worked with her and that he shared a company with her. So it's very, very baffling.
Interesting for sure, right? Hey?
Yeah, never a dull day with Canadian politics, at least on a federal level.
And then if you're a regular Canadian, hard to get a passport, but it seems like if you've been convicted before or admitted to drug smuggling people, why not, right?
I mean, that kind of thing just astonishes me. But I remember last year there was a press release came through from the RCMP, and it said this man, I can't remember the exact details, but a man was, I believe he was convicted, and he was going to be sentenced, and he was out on release, but in that gap between those two things, and then he just disappeared. He left and went to India, and I thought this is surreal. So I called up the RCMP and said, "What on earth is this?" And in a kind of off the record conversation, this police officer said, "This happens constantly. This happens all the time, and there is no communication between CBSA and the police or any of these other organizations." So I guess this is just pretty commonplace, really.
Well, I mean, I know it's tough enough for a regular person to just get their passport renewed. So I know that's getting better, but like, wow.
Yeah. Well, it's also kind of it's hard. It's hard to get into Canada anyway. I say that as an immigrant myself, and it's quite hard to get the passport. It's you really have to work to get it, and it's kind of this does seem to cheapen it a little bit.
Yeah. BC's inflation rate's second highest in Canada in October as prices up 2% nationally. And then with the falling Canadian dollar versus the U.S. currency, those things could likely only to get worse, right? And leading that way is things like uh, shelter and food is are the big leaders in that, right? So
Yeah.
alcohol, beverages, tobacco products, and some of that is really related to just um, property taxes too.
Yeah, BC's very, very high.
Yeah, just like, hey, you're complaining about inflation, the government can help. We just increase your taxes, right?
Well, I suppose all of the staff that work for the province and the city and whatnot, they all need their
Well,
inflation adjusted pay.
we did see Mr. Eby then appoint a bigger bloated cabinet, right? So obviously they need more money.
Yeah, well, they got to get it from somewhere, I guess, and that's where they choose to levy it.
Yeah. Um, and then we're going to move on into some of the interesting stuff in AI and different things here like this. We have this one young fella wanted to ride in the Baja, but he had diabetes, and his mom said the only way he could do it is he could live stream the whole thing the whole time. So he taped a Starlink dish to his head, and so he was live streaming the whole time he was doing it. I don't know if Romo can pull that video up there.
On the
So he has a 360 camera over his head.
what an entrance!
And then tied to all that
On
is
the
a Starlink
279X,
dish taped to
this
his
is
head.
David
Now there's
Hunter, but we have Ben
an old
Hunter, I believe,
red
on the
green
phone.
duct tape's your best friend.
Taped onto his head. Oh my gosh! Tell me about your race.
Yeah, that's good enough there, Rommel. That's one way to do it, Ian.
Yeah, why not, eh?
And then if you want to get some word about the optimists out there, why not give a optimist to Kim Kardashian with her 500 million followers across all social media platforms. People usually pay for her stuff, and here she is interacting with optimists.
Can you do this? I love you. You know how to do that? Okay. What should we do? Go running. Let's go for a run. Do you know how to do? Oh, you are Hawaiian. Okay.
Anyway, there's a little bit of optimist. There's a few other videos that Kim Kardashian has posted as well, but that's a good way to get some word out about where Optimus is at. Give it to a lady like Kim Kardashian and let her show it to her 500 million followers.
Yeah, should give one to Donald Trump as well. That would be the next best thing.
Well, he's going to be at SpaceX today for the launch.
Wow,
So,
they're just best buds now, aren't they? It's really quite the bromance.
Hanging out all the time, right? So at some point, both of them got to get to work, I guess, though, right?
Yeah, I've already seen a couple of articles alleging that Trump's team is sick of Elon and how he's kind of like overstayed his welcome. But I guess that's like they are the spurned courtesans, aren't they? And they're kind of they're upset that they've been displaced by Elon.
Best friends, so hey. And another interesting one that was out there, Coca-Cola launched their holiday ad, and we're going to play this ad for you. This is all AI generated. Just going to creep over the side here. So where Coca-Cola's done many of these animated ads in the past, and this one is fully AI. So yeah, I don't know if you got a chance to see that, Ian, but it's obviously caused a bit of a stir from like, wow, that's impressive, to like, that's just stealing work and a bunch of things, right? So just people
Well, I
saying,
think
go ahead.
back when there was a strike, wasn't there? The Hollywood writers and producers, I think they all went on strike, didn't they? And it was about AI. And I think at the time, a lot of people were kind of like, why are they so afraid? Like, what are they scared of? But I think the evidence now is, you can't ignore it, can you? It is going to put these people out of work.
Yeah, because I mean that is along the theme of what Coca-Cola used to do for their holiday ads. And I don't know if that people saying it wrecked the purity of Coca-Cola ads. I'm just like, well, we have to remember they're selling sugar water, right? Like let's not go with the word purity of Coca-Cola here, right? So they are selling stuff that is not necessarily good for anybody. It's good for cleaning brakes and stuff like that. You know what I mean? It's a really good solvent in many
Yeah,
ways.
good for cleaning coins, apparently, if
Yeah.
that's your thing.
I mean, I must admit, I used to do 6 Coca-Cola a day. So as a recovering Coca-Cola indulgence, I'll say that nicely. Um, it's good to be a
It's
past.
undeniably nice.
It's a past part of my life as opposed to a current part of my life, because it's definitely not. Some people love it though, right? I know a doctor that he drinks still does 5 or 6 Coca-Colas a day. He said that's how he gets through his day. So there you
Believe
go.
it or not, I know a dentist that is on the Pepsi all the time.
There you go. Hey. So but they used to have like Coca-Cola and Pepsi used to have some of the coolest commercials ever, right? It's the real feeling. It's the Pepsi generation. I can still remember all from my youth, right? Because they used to pump that sugar water pretty strong, right? And
Yeah, Trump did
whenever,
one, didn't he?
yeah, Trump's a big fan of the Coca-Cola, and like even on that we talked about that image yesterday about them on the plane there with the Mickey D's and the Coca-Cola, right? So it's definitely
Yeah.
once you kind of have it and you have it on a regular basis, you just want more of it, right?
Apparently, I mean, there's a lot of things written about Donald Trump, probably the majority of which are not true, but it's supposed to be true of him that he just never drinks water. But it really is
Yeah.
that's all he ever drinks is
But
is
the interesting thing about that is he's never smoked in his life and he's never drank any alcohol, according to him. But he's definitely indulges in the Coca-Cola.
yeah, Coke, McDonald's, and women, it seems, are his vices.
And then according to RFK, KFC, what goes on Trump planes is not gourmet foods; it's KFC and Mickey D's.
Yeah. Well, it's like when he was president, he hosted an event at the White House, didn't he? And it was like a giant tower of filet o fish and
Was it?
Big Macs.
I don't know if his wife indulges too much. Then she doesn't look like she's an indulger in that stuff. So
Yeah. But then again, he doesn't look like somebody that has McDonald's every day, really.
no,
So it's a funny one.
he's pretty good shape for an old guy, right? Not as good shape as RFK Jr. though.
Well, I mean, he's kind of taken it to extremes, isn't he? I've never seen a man, what is he, 70? I've never seen a
70,
man with like full on pecs and everything at that age, so I don't know what
he's
he's doing.
he's 74.
Right. Well,
Not bad.
yeah, I don't know. Maybe he's good friends with Arnie or something.
Not bad. Okay. And then I think the last story I wanted to bring up is we're talking about AI. OpenAI to launch Operator in the new year. Like Operator meaning that it's going to take control of your computer and start doing tasks for you, like booking flights, writing code, all those kind of things where, you know, like text to action. I mean, the head or the former head of Google talked about it. Text to action will be the biggest thing that happens with AI. Text to action, if that makes sense. Where not only can you get answers, because right now AI is pretty impressive in, like, I don't use Google very much anymore because you just ask the questions and it'll talk back to you. But text to action, like, hey, whatever you want to call your AI assistant, can you book me a flight to Las Vegas? And I want to stay here, here, here. And it does it all that and sends it to you. Your own Jarvis. Do you know what I mean?
But if you think something that immediately comes to my mind, call me a pessimist, but I think of like Google, for example, where people used to be amazed where you could type into Google like flight to Toronto or something,
Yeah.
and then it would give you one. And then it didn't take very long for that to be co-opted by advertisers. And then you had things like, you could buy sponsorship, but it was also the case with cookies that it could find out that you were interested in a flight and then send you to a more expensive one. So I would sort of be worried that you would ask it, and then I know that OpenAI aren't necessarily accused of doing this, but I feel like in the long run, that amount of power is going to be extraordinary, isn't it?
Or how about this? You say, get me some lunch and get me some McDonald's, and it shows up and it's a head of broccoli, and then you're just like, what's this? And it says like, yeah, you've had enough McDonald's.
It's funny though, when you said it was called Operator, I sort of
Yeah.
assumed that you were going to say that it was going to be able to be like a receptionist or something like that. But I feel like surely that it must be able to do that already if you think about how good its
Yeah, I
reactions
think
are.
those kind of tasks are kind of in there, but I'm just like, text to action is the big thing, right? Text to action in so many different things, right? Plan my day for me, book appointments, um, all kinds of things, right? I think that's the big next step where you would actually have to do some of that stuff yourself, right? Like write me a report and then email it to Ian.
Yeah.
That's the kind of thing, right? So, um, yeah, it'll be an interesting world, right? Like I said, I have a car that I use now all the time that drives me back and forth to work with one button. You know what I mean? I just say take me to work or take me home, and it does that. And it's very relaxing actually, and you've experienced that yourself, right? And it seems to get better all the time. So, and then
Yeah, it's
uh,
excellent.
there was an announcement out yesterday out of the United States saying that that'll be one of the things the Trump administration will do is how to fast track autonomous cars in the United States. So big win
Well,
for Elon Musk, and obviously the stock is reflecting that.
yeah, he seems like the biggest winner so far in this election, but I don't know, these political relationships often sour, don't they? And I would not be surprised in the least if they they had a split at some point, but we
This
just have to wait and see.
to me it looks like a big win-win relationship, especially when we talk about, you know, like the adversarial relationship with China and Russia, where you have the Thomas Edison or the Albert Einstein of our time having all the tech and the ability and all these leading edge companies all at the disposal of the United States government, United States military. I mean, SpaceX is a military contractor, and the plan is, you know, they have a very substantial plan to get to Saturn here in the next 18 months. Not Saturn, sorry, Mars, and then establishing a moon base and all these things. And Donald Trump's one of his first visions before his partnership with Elon Musk was Space Force, and now Space Force is starting to look like a real thing.
Yeah, it was laughed at though at first, wasn't it? But it's important now. I mean, it's we were talking earlier about Russia there and nuclear. Well, the threat of nuclear war. I think the Space Force is kind of one of the lines of defense, isn't it? It's actually quite an important agency already.
It all of a sudden becomes probably one of the preeminent agencies, right? Because Space Force, because if you control the skies, and he launches, I don't even like how many rockets a day. You could take out all the satellite communications other than your own. You basically
Yeah.
have control, right? I mean, satellite communication or like Starlink, this low level communications. I think there's about 8,000 Starlinks up there right now, and you see them with the guy with the motorcycle, right? He's strapped one to his head, and he has like online communication the whole time. Think about that in the military aspects, right? Because it's very hard. Like sat phones, they would like have to stop somewhere, line it up, and do all these things, and they have mobile communications, right? Starlink is going into most airlines, cruise liners, all kinds of things, right?
Would certainly be one of the top targets in any kind of serious
and if you
conflict.
think about it, nobody's even close to Starlink, and the United States government has the guy that owns it in their pocket, kind of thing. You know what I mean? Like or sitting next to them. Do you know what I mean? Like it makes for a very interesting like advantage for the United States.
Well, yeah, certainly. I mean, there are some areas where China and Russia seem to be doing quite well, like hypersonic missiles and things like that. But in terms of satellites and a lot of other things like AI, I think the US is sort of light years ahead, isn't it?
Well, your own Doug Ford just signed a deal with Starlink to get internet access to remote communities in Ontario for $100 million.
Yeah, that was a funny one though, because I think somebody added up the amount of people that would benefit, and they said, why don't you just go onto the Starlink website and order them? Then it would be cheaper. But I assume there's something a bit more complicated going on there as well.
Yeah, no, I get that too, because it was 15,000 people or something. That 15,000 times 500 is less than 100 million.
Yeah.
But I think it was a guarantee.
I'm sure there's something else. Yeah, there must be something
there's
else.
a guarantee of service in that. But that doesn't even include the monthly service too, because the people still have to pay for their monthly service. But it's still a lot less than if, say, you had a cable provider go in there and say they had to lay fiber. It'd be make billions of dollars, right, to lay fiber into these remote communities and take forever. For the Starlink thing, basically, as long as it takes to ship there, as long as it takes Canada Post to get past the strike to get that stuff shipped to you, then you've got the internet within 15 minutes of setting it up. And I know from personal experience, it takes about 15 minutes to set up from the time you get it out of the box to having internet working on your phone or computer or whatever it is. You can have Starlink anywhere you go. So like if you're remote camping in the wilds of Ontario or British Columbia, you can now have access to help anytime you want or information anytime you want through the internet.
That's remarkable. Although it's, interesting that the federal government has been criticized quite heavily, hasn't it, for I think $2 billion they spent on a kind of something that would rival Starlink, rather than just go with Starlink. But I suppose I can understand the argument that you want to you want to try and build up your own industries, but rather than go with what is ultimately a foreign company.
Well, I think that Justin Trudeau just inked a deal with some Quebec firm for like around that number you said to create a satellite system to rival Starlink, and I'm just like,
yeah, it's actually an Ottawa company, Telesat, I think it's called, isn't it? Yeah, $2 billion.
Yeah, there's better places to spend that money instead of like trying to fight the company that's clearly in leading the innovation, right? Like that has 8,000 satellites already orbiting Earth, right? So
yeah, it just boils down to, are you content to have this technology be controlled by a foreign company, I guess. But I mean, this sort of thing hasn't really worked out in the past. Even during the pandemic, when there were attempts to make a Canadian-made vaccine, when that didn't really work out. It's sometimes you do just have to go with the big boys, even if they're south of the border.
That's what I'm saying. Like maybe spend our energy on things that we can provide some value on, as opposed to just trying to duplicate something that's already being done really well. That's like someone saying Canada's going to create a company that's going to create a better iPhone. We had the lead there, BlackBerry, remember?
Yeah, BlackBerry, yeah.
We had the lead. Anyway, I think that's it for today, unless you got something else.
No, I think we've done plenty.
We've exhausted that, right? So we'll see you tomorrow morning with your Need to Know. I'm Jim Csek. You've been watching Kelowna Now.
We don't just report the news. We live here too. We're your neighbors, bringing you stories that matter to all of us. No government funding, no outside influence. Kelowna Now, local, independent. News you can trust.